Hey, handsome.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. I told you. I wanted the pain to end.
Yeah. You did.
Mhm.
But that's not why I did it. The truth is, I hated you. I wanted you out of the way. I wanted my life back.
If that's true, then why do you look so sad?
Mary.
It's okay, James. Here.
What is this?
It's what you've been looking for. In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday, but you never did. Well, I'm alone there now, in our special place, waiting for you to come and see me. But you never do. So, I wait, wrapped in my cocoon of pain and loneliness. I know I've done a terrible thing to you. I wish I could change that, but I can't. I feel so pathetic and ugly laying here. Every day I stare up at the cracks in the ceiling, and all I can think about is how unfair it is. The doctor came today. Told me I could go home for a short stay. It's not that I'm getting better. It's just that this could be my last chance. Even so, I'm glad to be coming home. I missed you so much. But I'm afraid, James. I'm afraid you don't really want me to come home. Every time you come to see me, I can tell how hard it is on you. I don't know if you hate me or pity me. Maybe I just disgust you. I'm so sorry. When I first learned I was gonna die, I couldn't accept it. I was so angry. I struck out at everyone I loved. Especially you. And that's why I understand if you hate me. But I want you to know, I will always love you. Even though our life together had to end like this, I still wouldn't trade it for the world. Well, this letter has gone on too long, so I'll say goodbye. I told the nurse to give this to you after I'm gone. Which means that as you're reading this, I'm already dead. But that's okay. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I just hope the pain will end soon, so that you remember me for who I was, and not what the disease made me. I want you to go on. I want you to live. For yourself, and for others. Like you did for me. James, you made me happy.
Wow. Got a little bit emotional listening to that. The final letter. Damn, that's... What a game, huh? What an experience. That was great, I have to say. Great game. And then music like this right at the end. Sheesh, man. That was great. So, Silent Hill 2 was billed as one of the all-time classic, all-time best horror games. And having played this remake, which, from what I've heard in general, is very faithful to the original, very well done, compared to the original. It's hard for me to say anything, but yes, like it really does seem like an absolute classic. Again, trying to think back to when this game came out. Early era PS2, people were just coming out of the PS1 era, and going on a journey like this in like the early gen PS2 must have been like incredibly, it must have made an impact on people and affected them. Very heavy game, very heavy topics, but just riveting and really interesting to follow along the whole time. The horror elements were just superb. They were. Again, obviously, I don't have a huge amount of experience with this stuff, but I've been around for long enough to know what I think good horror should be, and I think this game really nailed it in many respects. So much of the game was really about that atmosphere and the sound design and the tension and the expectation and the angst and the panic and the caution, the creepiness, the discomfort, all of those things. And throughout the game, it just never let up. Did such an amazing job with all of that stuff, and I really, really appreciate this game. I really, really enjoyed it. The story kept me engaged throughout. I constantly wanted to know more. There were always so many questions and so few answers, but it never kind of drove me to a point where I'm like, you know what, I'm so completely like not understanding what's going on that I've given up on this story kind of thing. There was always like, they left enough breadcrumbs for you to try and form some ideas and try to figure out what was going on, and And basically by the time you get to the end, it really starts to piece together a little more. And of course, you're still left with a lot of questions, like, you know, did this entire thing just happen in a dream? Like, is it just, you know, what is Silent Hill now? You know, is this just a vision of how it appears in his dreams? Did he really go to Silent Hill on like a personal kind of redemption? All of these things, obviously, I want to read a bit more about. I'm sure there's very obvious signs of all of that stuff once you really look back on it. But I think the feeling that leaves you with the first time you play the story, obviously, is a lot of questions. And a lot of those other NPCs that we met, what really were their stories? Angela's was pretty fascinating the last time you see her on those hellish steps. The graves that we saw earlier on, and, you know, is it the case that he really did still like kill himself, but this was like still some kind of thing? But obviously the way the letter ended with the whole like, I want you to live kind of thing, that obviously makes it seem like he's alive. And this sort of, in his mind, this was sort of the vindication, like the letter that he kind of needed to find a new lease on life after the tragedy that himself and Mary went through. And did he actually kill Mary? Or did she just die in the facility and he was then sent this letter? And this is more about his guilt of like abandoning her basically at her time of greatest need. Or she was like, oh, I'm coming back for a time, but then she would never have got the letter. So I'm just thinking, like, did she go back? They reunited away from Silent Hill, and that's kind of where it happened. Like, she basically either wanted him to kill her or he killed her or whatever. And so I don't think that happened. I think that this was more of a... I think the killing her was maybe a bit more metaphorical, and it was more that he kind of abandoned her. And I think for me it's especially tough because, like, playing this now, I've been in a relationship for like about 3.5 years now with someone I love dearly, and it's something that I weirdly kind of think about from time to time. I just have that kind of brain. I think of all outcomes, and I try to kind of err on the positive side of all of that. So there's lots of negative outcomes in life, a lot of unfair outcomes in life, but there's also a lot of incredible ones. And so I try to go on the positive, but sometimes I do wonder, like, you know, when couples kind of commit their lives to each other, you know, in sickness and health and these kind of things. I think a lot of us obviously say those things out of love, and we all want to believe that if something horrible like that happens to our partner, we're gonna love them exactly the same. Nothing's gonna change, and we'll take care of them. We'll cater to their every need. But if that actually happens, you know, you have a really bad stroke of luck or something really bad happens, whatever it might be, is that really the case? You know, could you live with that? The situation that James was in, put yourself in his position. I think it's very easy and noble to say before you ever experience something like that, oh yeah, of course I would. But would you really? I don't know. Like, I hopefully I never ever have to experience it. My partner never does either, especially at a young age, which is I think where it's really difficult. Like, if you've lived a 30, 40, 50 year life together, and then things, you know, health declines, care needs, that kind of thing, I get it. But if you're still a relatively young couple in the prime of your lives, you know, you're in love, you're having a great life together, and then suddenly something happens and everything kind of turns upside down. Can you really be there? What if that lasts for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Who the hell knows? And so it's an incredibly difficult situation. And so, like, going through that letter at the end and finding out more of the true nature of the story, it was really interesting to me. And so, combat challenge standard, puzzle challenge standard, ending leave. I mean, the fact that he made it out of Silent Hill, I have to assume that was a pretty good ending, no? I mean, that seems like a good one to me. Obviously, we're going to kind of look it up and see what the other endings are. I might make a bit of a reaction video where I watch all of the endings and then kind of talk about them. I did that with Sekiro, actually, most recently, because I'm sure as hell not going to play through and get all 8 different endings. But I do want to see what they are and what some of them maybe mean or tell about the story. And so we'll have a look at that. But just under 24 hours, my first playthrough. I think that's pretty fair, considering that I had to play through, obviously, in an LP start. I was constantly sharing my thoughts with you guys, looking everywhere as carefully as I can, trying to play in a very careful style. And I think that showed in the fact that I literally, in standard difficulty, I played, I think, 17 hours of the game in standard difficulty, and I didn't die a single time. Considering the fact that a lot of people were saying that the standard difficulty is like highly tuned, it's very difficult. I think my approach and the fact that I started off with light while I was kind of training myself in the game definitely helped. So let's see. Yeah, times died 1, so we're not bullshitting there. Favorite weapon, steel pipe. There you go. 428 enemies killed. Yeesh. Number of dodges performed, 1,294. There we go. So what now? New Game Plus, where you can play with access to additional items, graphic modes, and endings. So, what happens here? Where does this take me? And like, where's the save file here? Oh, it takes me here. Okay. So let's just trigger a new game. Combat mode, new game plus. And then we've got these. Okay. Yeah, I'm not really sure about these. Let's just do the old CRT look. And then once things fire up, I'll start to talk about the game. A bit of a review format, I would say. Not too long on this one. It won't be like another hour thing, but just so you have some background footage. Look at this CRT vibes. Did we get a different start? I don't think so. Nah, this should be the same. Let's move it on. Oh my god. Yeah. I guess it's probably still like closer to how the original looked stylistically, but there we go. Okay. So yeah, all of those aspects that I've already talked about. I think this is definitely worth talking a bit more about the game itself. For me at least, the game also was really, really good. I mean, the gameplay aspect, the combat, of course, as I think pretty much anyone playing this would have already guessed or would know, the combat wasn't particularly like deep or sharp or tight or anything like that, but I think it was definitely perfectly serviceable for a game like this. And I think like it was just like nice and simple, honestly. In that sense, I think it was kind of good that it was the way it was. I didn't have to think too hard about the combat. I just had to focus more on just keeping my eyes and ears as open as possible to kind of scope out threats as best I can and that kind of thing. So I think combat-wise, I thought the game was fine. Yes, I think I would have liked it if things felt a little tighter. Like I'm still like the dodge animation with this stuff. I feel like they could have maybe made it a little tighter, a little better. But honestly, I don't have too much of a complaint about it. It's definitely I would put it more on like the good side of things. But I don't think I can deal with the CRT. This is not it. Can I change this? We'll just go back to. Let's just go back to normal, please. What about 90s? Let's do that. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I think it was perfectly fine. I think it was definitely good. I was more, I think, impressed with like the level design and structure than the combat. Like the design of the different areas and the way that the enemies behaved and that kind of thing. Like I think the mannequins are some of my favorite individual enemies that I've seen. I don't think I've played a game where there's been anything like the mannequins before. They were really, really interesting. The way that they obviously look was already incredibly unnerving and very iconic. Like there's no enemy I've faced that kind of looks like that anyway. But just the way that they move, the way that you can look down a dark corridor and just see a flash of them going by, the way that they're kind of just casually like standing in the corner of a room, the way that they attack, like those guys were just like, they were my favorite enemy of the game, even though like I kind of hated them the most. They were my favorite enemy. They were pretty special, in my opinion. They were awesome. Like the other ones, they're all relatively generic. Like once you obviously start getting to the nurses with the melee pipes and all that stuff, like we've faced enemies that can melee you with pipes and shit. But the way that those the way that those mannequins fight was just really interesting to me. And so I think in that sense, the way that they designed the areas and the way that they made you go through the game constantly tense, and they trained you to kind of look around carefully and be vigilant and you know, utilize your dodges, all that kind of stuff. I thought that was all really, really nicely done. So I was definitely happy with that. And of course, as I've been saying, like the atmosphere and the visual, like the audio visual side of this game was absolutely top notch. I think they did a really, really great job. And it seems like they really translated a lot of the atmosphere of the original to this one. I mean, that's partly why it reviewed so well. And a lot of people are saying it's definitely, at least in the conversation, the game of the year. Maybe there's a category or two that it could win. And I definitely think it could be deserved. They just did a really, really nice job. So well done to Team Bloober. I would say the boss battles in general were pretty good. They were intense, for sure. I don't think, again, because of the general kind of, I think, simpleness of the combat, they weren't anything like particularly special, I think. But in general, I would say I was pretty happy with them. Okay. Did I miss that last time? So yeah, Pyramid Head, of course, pretty iconic design, but ultimately, like, James knew what Pyramid Head was, but like I'm not exactly sure what Pyramid Head represented here. Like, obviously some kind of inner demon like thing he had to overcome or whatever it was, but I thought it would have led to a bit more of a singular thing in that sense. But Pyramid Head literally became like double in the end. So I need to do a little bit more reading and research to see what that was all about. But like the map utilization, I think was really nice. Like most places had a map for you to follow. And the way that James looks at the map and marks things, like I basically was never lost or lost a sense of where I needed to be, which was really helpful, I think. So it really aided with like the exploration and just making sure you check everything as best you can. So I think that was all really nice as well. And so yeah, overall I think it was, for what this game was trying to do, I don't think it gets too much better than that. Like, even the way like James is, and that I've commented on it so many times at this point, it really, like, so many of those cutscenes, they're just like, it's just weird. It's just awkward. It's weird the way that they talk to each other, the way they interact with each other. Sometimes like both characters in a scene, they act like they kind of don't really know what's going on, or have they seen each other before? Do they know each other? What was going on here? What are we doing here? Like, there was always this air of like weirdness and awkwardness about the things, and you could argue some of it is like kind of wooden performances or bad acting or animation or whatever. But I think if there's one game that can kind of blend all of that into this overall feeling of just unease and weirdness and like something ain't right here, it's this game. And so even that ended up working well for the game. And so a lot of the scenes and the interactions between the characters of the game, I just found like this, I was constantly just like weirded out, like what is going to happen next with regards to the story and these character stories and the interactions and stuff. So yeah, just it all was in service, I think, of the overall experience from what I've seen. So in general, I would say I was very, very happy with what I played. In terms of, at this stage, like the things that maybe could be a little bit better, I would say just, honestly, overall, just a little bit more optimization and tightness with regard to the gameplay. There are some times where, say, like, I think the dodging can get a little bit janky. Like the iframes and like the kind of hitboxes and stuff are a little bit janky sometimes. There were some bullets I fired that went to places they shouldn't have gone, I think. That's one thing. I think other than that, I would say maybe sometimes like the amount of rooms in an area was a little bit too much potentially, like, because we had so many areas that were basically apartment complexes or buildings with lots of rooms in them that I think maybe is a little bit too much. That little bit nitpicky, honestly, like not a big thing. But I think if it was maybe like 10 to 20% less rooms, like a lot more of them were permanently locked or you just couldn't navigate through them, I think like that would have probably made things flow a little more maybe. Because obviously there's a lot of up and down with regards to like those places where you go up to the third floor, come back down to the first, then go up to the second, then go down to the basement. So I think sometimes there was a little bit too much of that happening. And especially... Did I miss this the first time as well? So already, like, there's a bunch of things basically missed the first time. Or maybe these are New Game Plus items, I don't know. And so I think, like, that's... When you're playing for the first time especially, I think you're just so eager to see everything and do everything and look in every corner that I think maybe, like, sometimes pacing momentum-wise it can drag on a little bit. But I think, again, like, that's not... I wouldn't call it, like, a big criticism by any stretch. And so I think those two are probably some of the main things. I think that the boss battles were... They were okay, like, they were good, but I wouldn't call any of them, like, particularly great. And I think that it's just hard. It's hard to do. I think the puzzles in general were pretty nice. Like, nothing particularly great, I think, about the puzzles. I think it was a little bit repetitive, kind of like find different pieces, put them together in one puzzle, and kind of just... You could basically almost try and error through a lot of those types of puzzles as well. Maybe a little bit more puzzle variety, possibly, like something a little bit more like bigger scale could have been good, but honestly, like, nothing that I would have a legitimate complaint about in terms of the puzzles. I thought they were definitely good, and again, like, it was in service of the game. I think they've done it nice. And so I think overall that's generally it. I don't really have that much to complain about. I mean, I think any other stuff beyond that is more a case of just, like, fundamentally maybe not enjoying, like, the game's genre or style, which I can't say was the case for me. And so I feel like, having played Silent Hill 2 Remake as well, I mean, it's hard for me to say that I'm not that big a fan of horror. I mean, this was a great experience. As much as I, you know, definitely had my moments where I was a little bit panicky, and one or two, honestly not a lot of jump scares if I'm being honest, less than I expected, which is probably good, because I still feel like jump scares are just cheap, and I think I prefer this type of approach. And it's something I definitely give the game props for. It's just so easy to, like, every 5 to 10 minutes just have your, you know, player go through a dark corridor, turn a corner, and then boom, like, something appears, loud noise, bang, something jumps on you. Like, it's such a cheap trick that you can pull, like, as many times as you want. And there's going to be people, like, every single time they're going to fall for it, and they're going to shout, they're going to scream, and for them that's what horror is, and that's what they love. But for me, it's not. Like, for me, it's just an overall feeling, like that prolonged feeling of unease and tension and being on edge and not knowing what's going to happen next, what's going to come out the darkness, what's going to be around the corner, what's the source of that sound that I'm hearing, all of that kind of stuff. And so now, we have a chainsaw. This is what New Game Plus looks like. Oh my god, that's great. That's pretty cool. Did I put it away? No, I can't. What, I run through the whole game with a chainsaw? Oh no, I can. Okay. So yeah, I definitely give the game props for not leaning too heavily on jump scares as well. And so yeah, I think now that I've graduated from the school of Silent Hill 2, it's fair to say I can enjoy horror games for sure. I just don't think there's that many truly great ones in the genre. Like, if I'm being honest, if you told me to, like, say which horror games as an outsider have you kind of heard of and would say a good like horror games, like not I would say mostly action games, but legit like horror games, I would say some of the Resident Evil experiences, but Resident Evil still for me is more on the action adventure side of things than horror. I would have said Silent Hill. I would have said PT, but that's basically a demo, but it became so iconic that you can't mention horror gaming and not mention PT. And again, Dead Space, yes, definitely horror elements, but I feel like that's, again, definitely an action-heavy game. And maybe Alien? Isolation? Something like that. There's not that many, like, there isn't that long a list. Like, if I was to say, oh, what do you think of some iconic JRPGs? People can reel off stuff for days, but for horror, like, truly great stuff that isn't just violence, horror, action kind of thing, I don't think like there's that many of them. It seems like a difficult thing to pull off. And so, from here, in terms of future playthroughs, I don't know where I'll go. There's still definitely Resident Evil to play. I'm not going to kind of set myself the target of constantly looking for, like, the most pure horror, scariest games or anything. But now that I've kind of got my Silent Hill experience in, I'll have a look at some of the other Silent Hill titles. I'll see if any of them interest me. I've always heard about the second game, honestly. The first one has never got a true remake. Maybe if they remake the first one, I'll definitely have a look at it. But as it stands right now, I'm not that set on playing it, if I'm being honest. Alien Isolation could be possible as well. And there's, of course, some more Resident Evil titles that I haven't played. But we will see. So for now, I think I'll wrap things up here. And I will bring you guys a final episode where I'm going to watch some endings. And I'm going to just basically kind of react to them and share my thoughts. But had an amazing time with this game. Hope you guys enjoyed it too. Thank you so much for supporting me on this series. And especially to anyone who basically doesn't play horror, doesn't really watch horror. But because I'm kind of playing through and they're hoping that I'll be, you know, someone to guide them through the horrors. If you've managed to do that and you've watched through the whole thing, massive respect and thank you guys so much. Appreciate that especially, and I will see you guys for more experiences in the future. So one more episode to come most likely, and I will see you guys there for the other endings and hopefully unraveling some more mysteries about this game. Take care.